I'm depending on you all having seen the Mike Amesbury fight video.
Of course, but not because of any interest in politics. It's because I watch fight videos on X, the Everything app, religiously.
Thank you.
So, like, obviously, when that popped into my favorite, like, reprehensible fight aggregator Twitter account, I was like, holy shit, is that the MP for Runcorn?
Fight aggregator, isn't that just Weatherspoon?
We can recreate them in the aggregate.
Yeah, that's right. Money fight.
Wait, that's just like boxing?
Yeah.
I've invented a new sport. It's called money fight.
Yeah. Well, no, where you throw money at each other like Scrooge McDuck.
Mr. Beast will be debuting this in a week's time.
No, money fight in the sense of not relying on having an especially hard guy in your group when you're on a night out in Stoke-on-Trent, but that there being a kind of average level of scrappiness amongst the group of lads that makes you an intimidating prospect, but one which goes under the radar. People underestimate your abilities in a scrap.
Me and my friend group are very much the Oakland Athletics of this all bar one.
Wait, it's like a numbers-wise manager put you together by going against conventional wisdom?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
When Gaz was put in charge of the Newcastle-under-Lyme Scrappers, they seemed like a ragtag bunch, but with a simple method of arming them with pint glasses, he found they could perform at an above-average level.
Like the invention of glassing was like done by a manager.
Doing pub fight sabermetrics, you just got like 50 Excel spreadsheets open all the time. Yeah. Well, this guy's glassings per minute is like, it doesn't look great at first, but if you really drill down into the data, you can see he's got potential.
So what's interesting is he doesn't hit very hard, but that doesn't break the glass, and he gets more punches per minute.
What's less important is how many punches he throws and how accurate those punches are. That has better predictability for how many geezers he'll knock out. We've been looking at the wrong data.
And now, the Trash Future Podcast presents a hidden tape from the Nixon collection that was released recently.
Haldeman, you've got to stop. I'm going to not.
Richard Nixon begins by saying, "Who gave us this Tony Hinchcliffe character? I was told he's to fire up the crowd in Peoria with some amusing racial remarks about the Puerto Ricans, but I met him this afternoon, and what is he, some kind of a expletive, homosexual vaudeville act? What the expletive is he doing on my campaign?" H.R. Haldeman replied, he's popular with shut-ins mainly. John Mitchell's boy likes him on the radio. John Mitchell made the connection, and as to no, he's not, or at least we don't believe he's an out-and-out Mary. He's married. He has a wife. The president replied, "I don't care if he's in a lavender marriage. Don't ever bring him around here again. My God, that pansy Arthur Schlesinger's going to eat us alive for this one. What's the expletive point of it having an imperial presidency if we got to put up with these people?" Hello and welcome to TF, the podcast with two introductions. It is Riley. It is November.
Vote for your favorite introduction at the website.
Yeah, guess which host of Trash Future has been thinking about Richard Nixon all day?
Me, I was masturbating. He's a sexy man.
Yeah, we haven't actually decided the name for our kid just yet, but it is now on a short list. So
Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon Kasvani.
Like a Kosovar kid born in 2001?
Yeah.
Could be like Richard Nixon Kasvani.
Oh, like one word? Yeah.
Tricky Dick Nixon Kasvani.
Like Chinese dengists, a lot of them named their children Richard Nixon.
Hussein, this is one of your final episodes before you take a little bit of time off.
It may be the final one. It may be the second to final one. We'll wait and see. Maybe the baby will make a cameo at some point before January, depending on how December goes. We'll see how it goes.
Ultimately, the kind of retirement plan for us is we all have kids, or like between us enough kids that the podcast descends to them.
Yeah, we're going to do Nepo baby stuff before this, and they're still going to do the same bit. bits and
trash future,
jokes.
the next generation.
Like Degrassi.
You should think of it as less Hussein taking a hiatus from the podcast so much as he's going Haldeman mode by becoming increasingly inaudible for a period of time.
I'd like to add, H.R. Haldeman was a lot of strange things other than just hard to hear.
Really? One of Richard Nixon's orbiters was a weird guy.
But
That's
his
crazy.
inaudibility masked so many of them, thus proving the adage. Better to shut up and be thought a weirdo than open your mouth.
Although I gotta say, I do think it's very funny that like people who work for Kamala Harris, we're not going to talk about this that much, but I do think it's very funny that people who work for Kamala Harris are now going to have to like find out who Big J Okerson is for opposition research. Like, to me, that's very amusing.
It's just the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards podcaster having a really outsized impact on election.
I mean, every time.
It's never the podcast that you want. It's the podcaster who orbited Joe Rogan and now kind of like psychologically tortures stand-up comedians by making them drive to Austin and sleep in their cars before auditioning for him in a really creepy sort of way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's like, where do all of these people come from in Trump world?
Just like having to explain to Kamala Harris, right, who is an evil but like quite serious politician. Yes, ma'am, this guy was loosely associated with a podcast called Legion of Skanks.
The Royal British Legion of Skank.
Where's your skank poppy?
She goes onto the wrong podcast and it's just like talking to like one of those British podcasts that's just sort of about soap operas.
Well, I can tie this back together, right? Because Trump went on Joe Rogan, right? This is what this has all been building to. And I was trying to think about who the equivalent of Joe Rogan in Richard Nixon's day was for him going on Joe Rogan being like, no, I was never smoked DMT. What the fuck accent was that?
How about I try it?
Yeah, please. Edit that out and replace it with Riley.
No, Joe, I haven't tried the spirit molecule. I think it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, and so I was thinking about this, and I came to the conclusion that is just Frost Nixon. That David Frost was the Joe Rogan of his day.
Yeah, we have already seen Frost Nixon, and it's unfortunately it's a podcast. I want to talk a little bit about the UK though, because
we have to.
I know we do. Well, no, because something fun happened, which is I love it when MPs get fighty, and the MP for Runcorn has appeared on November's fight aggregator Twitter.
Yeah. My World Star vertical column that I keep in TweetDeck running all the time on my second monitor. Just in case I need to pick me up, I can look at some like content of people like fighting each other. And so I happened to see one of Keir Starmer's slate of like highly qualified, eminently selectable and electable candidates just straight up haul off and sucker punch a guy in the street in a sort of like regional town center in the middle of the night, and then start punching him some more while he was on the ground, and then get pulled off him while a bunch of kind of screaming women like vaguely held him back, and he kind of what was really funny about this was he invented his own like post hoc justification for having hit the guy by, as he was being pulled away, going, "And you'll never threaten me, the MP for Runcorn, again."
Which is a good warning, because I like to threaten the MP for Runcorn regularly, and so it's important.
It's like a cop shouting "stop resisting" to cover the police brutality, is to be like, stop threatening me.
Stop threatening the MP for Runcorn.
He's the MP for World Star. MP safety is so important.
Well, I mean, for instance, that guy, his face did a lot of damage to the MP's fist. So, we've got to start thinking about these things.
Yeah, what I love is, as you say, number one, the soberest anyone has ever been is the official TF position on Mike Ames parade.
I think we can legally say that this guy was good to drive.
Yep. Yeah. The most legal to drive, sober as a judge, MP, wandering by himself at night around the town, and then having a discussion with someone that ends in I guess this guy rapidly face butting his fist with his face.
I guess the thing is, right, until you get in the fight, that's got to be a pretty fun experience to just be like plastered and walking around your own constituency late at night, feeling like it's got to be like the political equivalent of Bad Lieutenant. You're just like, yeah, I'm the fucking king of Runcorn. And then a guy mouths heads off to you.
But then the People's Joker shows up and you're fucked.
Once you have vanquished the constituents in single combat, their complaints become meaningless.
Do they fight each other? Do they bite each other's wrists? I had a good Herzog in there, apparently.
Are you referring specifically to Bad Lieutenant 2? Directed by Werner Herzog.
Port of Call Runcorn.
It's one of my favorite sequels ever. I think it's an amazing film.
Yeah, well, I think what we need to do is need to get all the MPs into a money fight type scenario. Because I think, the MP for Runcorn, obviously he's winning his fights, but he could be winning them by more if he leverages simple data analysis.
We're now at a dividing time where we need to decide how are we going to take care of MP's safety? Because obviously, like, Mike Amesbury was just walking around minding his own business, sober as a judge. And so, like, there's nothing else we could do to, like, make him take more precautions. So I think either we need to, like, get MPs into, like, MMA or...
Plausible. We could start arming them.
Yeah.
The phrase going for an MP's service weapon like is immediately projected into the forefront of my mind in like 12-foot tall golden letters.
Yeah. But in the tradition of British Parliament, they should only be armed in like abstruse medieval ways, like crossbow, halberd, like big mace. That's what
Jacob Rees-Mogg has bisected a constituent with a ballista bolt.
Yeah, mounted on his penny farthing.
Just like, let's see you say some shit to me once I finish loading my arbalest.
Well, you see, the thing about the ballista is it wasn't particularly combat offended. It was mostly intended to terrify the enemy and cause them to rout. And that is much in the same way I employ it in my constituency. It's very rarely used in anger.
Oh, God, Marc Francois is coming, and he's towing behind him a 5th century Chinese or early gunpowder artillery.
Marc Francois' dragon lance.
Yeah. Why is this artillery piece named the Richard Nixon?
The other, I think, option for improving MP's safety is, of course, not every MP can be Marc Francois. Some of them are Labour MPs.
Wish they could.
Many of them are Labour MPs, and they need to be protected differently. Now, I was thinking maybe either some kind of a vac cube or an avalanche protection sphere that they could just, deploy around themselves when they are faced with a threatening constituent in one of their traditional nighttime constituency walks.
That would be fun.
Yeah, if you try confronting your Labour MP about the fact that he maybe like owns several like slum properties and like a children's home from which children have been going missing, then he simply gets into his like Zorb, from like Zorbing.
Did anyone consider that he was
Rolls
going
down
for
the
like
hill.
a mental health walk and that the man who confronted him was actually confronting his mental health, and therefore he was defending his mind.
Until the moment that he realized he might get in trouble for this, I bet his mental health was great after that.
Oh, yeah.
Real morale booster.
I think, we should give all MPs the avalanche protection backpacks where you pull a ripcord and then it inflates a giant sphere around you.
What, from fucking Tomorrow Never Dies?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Fucking James Bond can't invent anything. Okay, fine.
Yeah, that's right. But I think that could be fun, You're like, hey, Jazz Athwal, how come children keep going missing from the care home that you own? And then he could look around.
He doesn't own it. He's just besties with the guy who does own it, and he rents it to him.
Hey.
Okay,
they
fine.
keep getting roundhouse kicked by Marc Francois, but no one will report on this.
Yeah, then he could just pull the ripcord, and then he could be encased in a safe, protective bubble.
Yeah.
Speaking of this is what November you were mentioning earlier was Jazz Athwal, another squeaky clean candidate elected for a master party political media manager, Keir Starmer.
Also Wes Streeting's former boss, because Wes Streeting was under him in council, where his job, Wes's, was like child safety. This will be relevant.
Oh, cool. Because it transpires that, yes, Jazz Athwal, one of the many properties that he owns as a landlord, some of them were just infested with mold and ants. This one was rented to a child care group, which then sold its services to Ilford Council.
In a completely unconnected thing, Ilford Council spent like 500% more with this firm after that than they had done before.
Well, because they had to find all those children. It's expensive finding children.
Yeah,
They're very small. They hide in small places.
Yeah, Hussein.
I'm making notes right now, but my child may be vanished and be somewhere in Ilford in the next few weeks.
Doing Ilford Taken.
I have a very particular set of skills.
Mostly knowledge of the A12.
It would be regular Liam Neeson because Liam Neeson in Taken isn't French, right? The guys who take his daughter in Taken are like weird Eurotrash French guys. So it would be those guys on the phone to regular Liam Neeson quaking in their Essex boots.
That's right.
Quaking in their immaculate white trainers.
Yeah, there you go.
Pant legs stuck to their ankles.
Long stream of piss down the inside of a pair of Calvin Klein jeans.
A 2019 offset inspection of the home, which opened in 2013, reportedly mentioning bullying and intimidation, which led to children being stabbed. A September 2020.
What?
Led to a child being stabbed.
Huge escalation in that sentence alone. There's bullying, very, very bad. Intimidation, worse than that, leading to, getting worse still, a child getting stabbed?
Well, very simply, that child shouldn't have threatened the MP for Runcorn.
No.
His hands are registered as lethal weapons.
You mess with the bull, you'll get the Runcorns. Anything.
Yeah, a child has been bludgeoned unconscious with a pair of nunchaku after interrupting the local MP on his 5 a.m. walk.
The thing is, when the MPs are all first elected in the Commons chamber, some of them get like guns and swords and stuff, but others just get like pot lids.
It's like Battle Royale.
Battle Royale.
Yeah.
I can't wait to like speak to my MP about something boring and procedural and get my head shorn off my shoulders by a kusarigama.
The one MP who gets poison. And he has to use like skullduggery to kill his enemy. Yeah. He has to lure his constituents up to a delicious cake, you know? Or like an apple that's suspiciously placed in front of them.
Oh, God. Okay, everyone on my street draws lots to go complain to our local MP about the number of potholes because he's the one guy that was given the Zanbatu horse killer sword.
Yeah, I tried parking outside the constituency surgery and he cut the front 2/3 off my car.
It sucks that I happened to live in the constituency that got the landmines this year.
Incredible arm strength.
He cut the front 2/3 off my car is such a fascinating way of phrasing that because it makes it sound like you were sat in the boot and observing helplessly as he calmly cut the front 2/3 of the car off, leaving you sat harmlessly in the very rear.
The other thing about this, right, tides of history moment, when the last time that your local representative was the guy who could swing the horse killing sword the hardest was like the early Middle Ages. We're going back. We're going back.
Return with a V to when your local representative to like central government also happened to be amazing with like a Zweihander.
Yeah. Well, I think it should be like purge rules, right? If you want your MP to do some casework for you, there should be one day a year where you're allowed to like engage him in single combat. And if you win, he has to do whatever thing it is you're bothered about, whether it's something important or whether it's like, I don't like where my neighbor puts his bin. Like if you make him yield to you in single combat, he is duty bound to do it.
Well, this is the thing, right? That swings and roundabouts because, okay, that's very useful to us, but there's also one day a year where we have to be Jeremy Corbyn's volunteer bodyguard from an army of the baldest men on the internet.
Yeah. Well, I personally can't wait for us to like live in the constituency of Berserk. I think that's going to be great. Jazz Athwal, just before we move on, he is once again appears to be involved somehow in some business that is sort of actively harmful.
Yeah, it's called being a landlord.
Well, indeed. He is the landlord of this commercial property that is used by a care group that is selling its services to the council at what appears to be a relatively high price, of which Jazz Athwal was the leader. He appears also to have been like constantly talking on Facebook with the guy who runs the care home and once called him a Don, according to the investment into the investigation, excuse me. But then, of course, when called, said, "Oh, I don't know that person. And then when quoted lying in this news outlet, The Londoner, his lawyer said, you shouldn't take seriously anything he said in the interview because he was on the train and it was busy.
Yeah, well, he just hung up on them, right? Because he said like 3 times, I don't know who runs this place. And then they said, is it the guy who you keep calling the Don on Facebook? And he hung up on them. They're all such shitty liars. It's so insulting to have enemies this stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, I've been losing at chess for like 3 consecutive years to a dog.
It's like, I've been losing at chess to someone who's not playing with a full complement of pieces because he's eaten both his bishops. This is who we sort of fought to sort of get into these just immobile forever seats.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we could say is that the next election is likely to be a wave election because Starmer, in this point of his premiership, is now polling lower than Sunak was at the same point of his premiership.
He polls worse right now than some diseases.
He polls worse than Eric Adams.
Amazing.
He polls worse than the guy who everyone else in every level of government above him can't stop telling to resign and like can't buy a phone without it getting seized by the police officers. Eric Adams. He's polling worse than Eric Adams.
He needs to take more Turkish Airlines flights. I keep saying this about. Honestly, if Keir Starmer was like doing some Turkish mafia stuff, I think his polling would go up. I think he would seem a bit cooler. He'd have a bit more mystique.
It comes out with a skin fade.
Yeah, comes back with veneers.
The key thing about Turkish organized crime is all the cheap cosmetic surgery they get.
He stopped taking bribes off Lord Ali, and then he just comes back. He's got like the high fade. He's got a full set of veneers. He's got hair plugs, and it's like nothing has happened. I've just been doing a little bit of manscaping, and I think it's made me more able to lead Britain into a new era.
What are you talking? No. I told you, I got rid of the suits Lord Ali brought me. This is an Emporio Armani t-shirt that's skin tight.
As you can see, I've got this Balmain belt on.
And the other thing I think is funny about that polling, though, is that Starmer's at 26% in this point of his premiership. At the same point, Sunak was at 29. At the same point, Johnson was at 40, May was at 46, and Cameron and Brown were both at 59, which is like what we're seeing is not like a bad leader, although we are seeing a bad leader. What we're also seeing is just a gradual collapse in confidence in a political system from everybody except people who are basically directly employed by it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. All of these guys had this brilliant chess gambit of we are going to like ride this loveless landslide into power. And at no point in any of this are we ever going to do anything that might make us popular. We're just going to become widely hated and stay that way. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to work out fine. Don't worry about it.
And then they're going to do things like ban disposable vapes, which is now appears to be policy, but also like compensate, making sure that military families are either exempted from or compensated for the imposition of VAT on private school fees.
I thought you were going to say that the military families get to still vape.
Okay.
You get like janissary, like hereditary privileges because your dad was in the Royal Signals or something, and now you get to hit the disposable vape.
You have to be able to vape if you're in the Royal Signals because that is one of the signals. You just blow a fat cloud into the air.
In fairness, Daniel Khalif, the hot guy who escaped from prison, the spy for Iran, he was in the Royal Signals, and he's one of the vapingest men I've ever seen. So,
and now he can send his kid to private school. So well done, sir.
One of the vapingest men I've ever seen.
He just has, you know, like how Anya Taylor-Joy has a face that knows what an iPad is, right? By the same token, there's a guy who it doesn't work if you put him in a sort of a context that doesn't have vapes in it.
You're saying his lips know the taste of banana ice?
Yes, basically. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So we talked about West Streeting a little bit. Let's go into that a little more because there are a few developments.
Yeah, I'm so angry about this one.
Well, I had some developments about sort of his plans to digitize more of the NHS, and evidence
I'm pretty
around
angry about those too. Yeah,
evidence about how some of that works. But then just today, actually, he appeared to speak in front of a conclave of transphobic nurses or something.
So like the deal with this is there's like half a dozen like TERF nurses. I'm not even really TERF, right? Because they're sort of sponsored by Christian Concern, who you may have heard of. Well, we should like dig into them at some point in the future. But like strange, like often US-backed evangelical lobbying group who do a lot of weird activism, like convincing parents of brain dead kids to like fight it out in the courts because Jesus will heal their very sick baby and then doesn't. One of the things that they also do is sponsor this little group of nurses whom Wes Streeting met with and apparently had a pretty sympathetic meeting where he was like, yeah, sex is biological and we've gone wrong in our society and we have to do something about this. And the NHS is going to be run under my watch along those principles, which is, apart from anything else, a total humiliation to not just trans patients, but I think a lot about trans healthcare workers, right? I said as much on Twitter that I know a lot of people, trans people, who work in the NHS doing thankless jobs for fuck all pay across inhuman hours. And their reward for this is Wes Streeting saying, yeah, but hold on though, I know which bathroom you should piss in better than you. It's just, it's beyond insulting.
It's beyond insulting to them, as you say, and you almost have to ask, at this point, what's it even for?
I mean, it's not even red meat, right? Because the kind of people who like this stuff will never be satisfied, least of all by a Labour government. It's, I don't, some of it's the cruelty is the point, but some of it is just that, this is what Wes Streeting personally believes. I don't know what's going on there, and it will be interesting to find out one way or the other, but there is some deep personal transphobia going on behind this, because a lot of Tories, for instance, who were perfectly happy to do this shit when it was convenient to them electorally, would privately be yeah, we know this is nuts. It's just, this is what plays. But there's not really any electoral calculus to be done here. It's just man who earnestly believes in this stuff. And that's much scarier to me.
A man who earnestly believes in this stuff, making sort of high level decisions on healthcare at a time when I see trans people self-reporting yeah, my GP just said they're not going to give me hormones anymore.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
At a time where, that kind of activity, which even in previous years, relatively recently, I would have been quite surprised at GPs refusing either on political grounds or personal grounds, or just quite simply that they're worried that they might already be overstepping whatever the legislation is.
It's a story of institutional capture, fundamentally. The reason why GPs started doing this more often is because of guidance that came out of the Royal College of GPs, who you may remember Hilary Cass was a former president of. Just gives you some sense of the kind of organizational culture at the top of that. It's the same thing that happened with the Equality and Human Rights Commission, right? Where these institutions that are sort of supposed to be fuzzy and woke and apolitical are very, very easy to destabilize if you're sort of aiming in a targeted direction, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, it's almost a little like how councils are so easy to take for a ride because they have this they end up with a lot by just an amount of money standards, not a lot for running a local government standards of money that they've put bill from accounts in charge of managing. And then it's very easy to just walk in there, a place where no one's really looking, and do something that is extremely impactful and beneficial for you personally, because everyone's looking at a lot of the bigger institutions.
Why shouldn't Runcorn have a monorail?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not unhelpful to think of this as a scam, functionally, in the sense that it is diverting time and resources from, providing healthcare to burnishing the reputations of people with some very self-interested and very weird agendas. A chilling portent of things to come. I mean,
it's also probably worth noting that trans healthcare is not a thing in and of itself, right? It's kind of multi-departmental, and I've spent quite a lot of time in maternity wards recently, and so it's very clear not only how that all sort of the idea of gendered medicine, how that's not really a thing, but also how going into a ward, you sort of see how complex that all is. But what you also see is how defunding, all the effects of sort of defunding that, all of which is to say that whatever move that is made to sort of placate these weirdos, and they are weirdos, don't get even their beliefs about women and mothering and birthhood and all that stuff, it's really weird and actually very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
And the consequence of this is just going to be you already are going to have dwindling, struggling maternity wards that, a lot of them, and even in London as well, because some backstory from my part, we transferred 2 hospitals because 2 maternity wards were just not kind of up to standard, even for the purpose of safety, as in you would be in one of them and you're this could kill you if we stayed here. And that is going to be what a lot of these departments start to look like. And, and I don't know how to explain, because it's already been explained. And like, what is very clear from a lot of these freaks that seem to want to advance this to like own whatever trans people that they see online is that like, well, actually, and we should really call them out on this, like they're willing to let a lot of people die needlessly to sort of placate their own bizarre maniacal agenda. And I don't think we should sort of like beat around the bush on that.
Absolutely.
No, but if you want to talk also about like a reduction in the quality of care, then also let's talk about not just Wes Streeting's wacko beliefs about like sex and gender. Let's talk about his wacko beliefs about the possibility that you just have to throw a computer at the NHS to fix it. So this was 1 week ago today, as of day of recording. Starmer, supported by Streeting, said of the NHS, "We need to go from analog to digital to use much better technology, whether that's the ambulance services, hospitals, neighborhoods, and generally making much more use of technology," which is fine, right? That's
sure.
Fine to say. That's true. But the question is how, for what, as always, the question is how,
who is supplying the technology, Correct. What oversight do you have over it? And is this like a fairly transparent way of getting around deeper structural problems? Yes.
Who is supplying the technology? Why is it G4S? Why are G4S doing it wrong? These are all the questions.
It's worse than G4S. It's fucking Palantir. Yeah. It's going to be Palmer Luckey, the guy who gets up on stage in his fucking Hawaiian shirt and talks about how cool it is to be part of a warrior cast.
I'm handing you a note. It's Peter Thiel. It's Peter Thiel. Palmer Luckey is Andoril. It's another Lord of the Rings reference.
Oh my god, these fucking nerds. If you've ever enjoyed the Lord of the Rings books, you should be thrown off the fucking Atterstoop.
So it is Palantir who's doing this, where one of the changes they're bringing is a single patient passport that allows you to bring information from GP to GP and so on and so on and so on. Again, a good idea to have, but as ever, instead of creating the state capacity to do these kinds of things, especially when it will be completely fucking impossible to ever change providers, the definition of vendor lock-in is we have all of the information that is customized to their pipes, to their servers, that interfaces with an app that they basically create the entire back end of. How can you say, I don't want to be with Palantir anymore, I'd like to go with, whatever other vendor?
I just also think about the still ongoing situation where a bunch of pathology in London, a bunch of biomedical sciences cannot get done because it was all underpinned by one system, which was then hacked with by like a ransomware gang, and so you just couldn't get blood tests done.
Oh yeah, and also this constantly happens with the NHS already. Like, I mean, one of my friends worked in like middle management in the NHS, and he says that like they are constantly like sold new IT systems, which then like mysteriously don't work with the other software that they use. And then the new IT system person they've employed are like, oh, well, you could always use our software to do that other thing that you use other software for. And they're like, but it should work with our software. And then it just never does.
Crazy how that happens.
Yeah.
This particular change is going to be a single source of all patient health information, test results, and letters accessible by the app, which again, run by Palantir, makes this thing that does sound relatively convenient, right, sound much more, quite sinister. And in fact, again, the aggregation of all one thing I always said, and I stand by, is that if data about you and other people who are roughly similar to you is being aggregated by someone, whoever's aggregating it gains power over you because they are able to understand you in ways that you might not. They're
putting your ass in the panopticon.
No, they're going to put you in a really good baseball team. That's what Palantir are up to. They're finding the healthiest guys in Britain, and they're going to create an excellent baseball team.
Yeah. The London Mets are finally going to be up to scratch.
There you go.
And so, and also we know, like, bringing all of this information together, a huge amount of like this digitize the NHS drive is being championed by Streeting and Starmer as a way to unlock a little bit of more copper wire that can be ripped out of Britain's walls in the form of selling that information to pharmaceutical companies, because the NHS is relatively unique in it is one umbrella organization, sort of, that manages the health of a huge number of people. And it's also worth noting, of course, that as per usual, there are lots of personal connections here. For example, and this is again noted by Ethan Schoen, who's been on the show a couple of times, who's very good at finding these things, is that Peter Mandelson is a lobbyist for Palantir. who is friends with and the former boss of Joe Dancy, Wes Streeting's fiance, who just got a £100,000 a year job at Labour HQ and was one of the candidates who failed to get elected, who also is a lobbyist, but that Wes Streeting himself was personally pushing very hard for NHS take-up of Palantir's product and referred to anybody who was skeptical about it as a tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracist.
Well, at Palantir, we've built a very buttery application.
Yes, we have.
I think you'll find that it just slides right in.
We're not just talking about technology that works to invade privacy, because in the same week, there have been reports that OpenAI, their transcription tool Whisper, which is heavily used by medical centers around the world to transcribe patient consultations with doctors, has now been analyzed by a number of engineers who've discovered about 50% of Whisper transactions contain significant hallucinations.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Oh,
so now every doctor that you see or every health professional that you see is going to see in your chart that you said something that you didn't say.
Yeah. But of course, the audio snippets then have to be deleted for data protection purposes.
Oh, of course. So cool. That's fun.
And so this is more information here. Another developer said he found hallucinations in nearly every one of 26,000 transcripts he created with Whisper, and the problem persists even in well-recorded short audio samples with clean backgrounds, with another study uncovering 187 hallucinations in 13,000 perfectly clear audio snippets.
I mean, it's good that medicine doesn't typically involve a lot of like very technical or specific language, right?
Yeah, of course. Because it's you know, when the average person would obviously say something like myocarditis, you know, and not something that sounds like with much more common short words.
Yeah, the patient has an oak heart.
I mean, that is true. The patient is a very stout person. But in one example, the researchers uncovered, a speaker said, he, the boy, was going to, I'm not sure exactly, take
Dr. Haldeman, inaudible.
He, the boy, was going to, I'm not sure exactly, take the umbrella. But the transcription software then added, he took a big piece of a cross, a teeny small piece, and I'm sure he didn't have a terror knife, but he killed a number of people.
Fascinating.
Where did the terror knife come from? See, this is one of the only things I find funny about AI, and also what's so terrifying about this is that when it's unpredictable, it is unpredictable. Like, it just comes out of nowhere.
Taking a cross and garlic into the doctor's surgery to ward off the receptionist. You can't get me, it's past 8:30 a.m.
Some kind of like ghost in the machine of like every possible conversation that this is stolen from anywhere yields up the words terror knife in like a GP consultation is so surreal.
A speaker in another recording described 2 girls and 1 lady. Whisper invented extra commentary, adding 2 girls and 1 lady who were black.
Oh, it's woke.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like they weren't white, by the way. It's doing that kind of Tumblr post from 10 years ago.
The doctor was his mother.
Yeah, doctor illegible.
Yeah, this is something we've seen actually before, where sometimes the system prompts for AI models where it says that you are Gemini, you are a model that blah blah blah, you're very helpful, etc. They will just include an attempt to make it more equitable. They'll include like black, Asian, woman, and so on to try to like make it not just always make white men.
This 9-year-old boy who was gay.
I wonder if that was that. But in a third transcription, Whisper invented a non-existent medication called hyperactivated antibiotics.
I mean, shit, maybe they're cooking with that because that sounds futuristic.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
Start hyperactivating that shit.
We got to get those before the Chinese do. And the impact, of course, right, is that this could lead to huge amounts of faulty transcriptions over millions of recordings, which, again, have all been deleted. You know, it also is like, this is the most popular open source recognition model. It's built into huge amounts of things. And, you know, there are health tech companies based in Europe, like the French company Nabla. It's basically an interface for Whisper. Like, that's its foundation model that it uses.
That's a company name to say very carefully, by the way.
Yeah.
Just fully looked up from the notes there. Huh?
Now, Nabla said no model is perfect and that theirs require... Sorry. Yeah, Nambla said no model is perfect, and that theirs currently requires medical providers to quickly edit and approve transcribed notes. But again, like, you can say all you want, everybody has to edit their transcribed notes. But if you're going to keep also putting pressure on people and say, the whole point of the transcription system is to save you time because we're not going to hire more people, then what you're really doing is you're saying, hey, check the notes, but you don't have more time.
But also, why is it like adding in like whole sentences? Because like even if you just get like the fucking inbuilt function on TikTok to transcribe something, it'll do it better than this.
So the reason for that isn't that it's hearing something else and trying to make words out of it. The reason for that is that it will sometimes just go off on a tangent, because it's always worth reminding people how generative AI works, which is that it's the assignment of tokens, a numerical value, and then it draws a graph which it thinks continues that line.
Yeah, no, sorry, I understand that. But what I mean is in like, there are good transcription tools that exist that simply don't do this. Like they might get things wrong, but they don't like add in whole sentences about, you know, who was queer and Latinx, by the way.
Yeah, it's that they don't do that because it's also because like they're not based on like generative AI. They're based on different underlying technology. Yeah. It's just that this is bad for that.
Oh, okay, fine.
One similar company, which is, by the way, important to note that we don't know if it uses Whisper as its foundational model, is Tortoise, which is Tortus, which is currently running a pilot program at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Dom Pimenta, the CEO of Tortoise, I really wish his last name was Pimento. That would be fun. AI in healthcare is the only realistic solution to the workforce problem we have.
Saying the quiet part loud, right? We can't keep treating these people like shit all the time. We need to be able to like generate new staff.
Yeah, we need to be able to generate new staff who will occasionally just like have their eyes roll back in their head and, you know, open their...
Well, because
we
this
need
is the
to
thing,
make
right?
Chat GP.
The kind of assumed margins of failure, right? Because like any health system is going to make mistakes and kill people by accident, right? And we bake that into the NHS as it currently stands, that it has like, you know, malpractice and it has like accident and it has misprescription and all the rest of it, right? And if your nan dies of that, well, you know, we're very sorry, but there's just the cost of doing business. Can't make an omelet without breaking eggs, right?
Can't make an omelet without killing a few nans.
Exactly. And we're witnessing those things being shifted to, well, you know, we're very sorry that your transcript said that, you know, you started talking about the terror knife, but that's just an unavoidable part of healthcare in the 21st century. That's just the way things have to be.
You go into the doctor with an arm ache and you come out and you've been prescribed PrEP and you're like, what's going on?
We say these are things how things have to be because it is also people like Wes Streeting who spent the last 6 months going up and down the country saying the NHS is unfixable. It is in crisis. It is the worst it's ever been. There's no solution to this problem. We have to reform. Everything is broken, right? As he is raising the opportunity. He's throwing up the ball for fucking Dom Pimenta to spike it. And who then goes on to say, clinical staff waste a lot of their time doing admin. And imagine the cognitive load of all that work. Doctors are trying to see their patients while they're driving their car. What if we could create autonomous driving for doctors?
Awesome. Put your doctor in a Tesla. This is
meaning more time of a doctor's day taken up with work, because that doesn't mean the shifts are going to get shorter.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite. Now you just have to work on your commute.
But that was a metaphor. I don't think he was being literal about...
Yeah, sure. But like, this is exactly the kind of thing. It's plausible that I would have believed it. This is exactly the kind of thing that like is going to be shoehorned in. It's not necessarily going to be that, but it will be something as stupid as that.
Yeah.
And this is also how none of the solutions are like really... It kind of reminds me of when I was about to go to secondary school. My mom was a school governor at my primary school, and she got invited in her capacity as a school governor to go and view the comprehensive school that we were technically in the catchment for, which ended up getting shut down a few years later. But she went in, she had like a tour of the school, and she went in the school library, and the librarian was there, and she said, there aren't really any books in here. Is this the library? And he was like, yeah. And then she's like, but if it's the library, why aren't there any books? And he just went, it's all on computers now, isn't it? And I feel like that kind of approach is what's being taken with the NHS here. Just like, no, it's on computers, isn't it? Yeah, don't need any of that. Computer.
Yeah. Don't need a doctor. We have an iPad.
Get an email. Yeah, easy.
I want to do our last segment here. We're running short on time, which is, I think probably I've talked a lot in superlatives recently about the importance of certain events that have happened. For example, I think the Global Investment Summit that was hosted by the Starmer government a few weeks ago is probably one of the most consequential things for life in Britain that has happened in recent years. I think in terms of something similar has happened in the United States recently. About 6 weeks ago, which I think we mentioned briefly at the time, a number of AI CEOs, including the Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, Sam Altman of OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and so on, all went to the White House to have a meeting on AI, energy, infrastructure, and national security.
Yeah, Biden wanted to find out why his ping was so high.
Yeah, Biden was like, where are my emails going? The other people who were there are some people who you'd expect, like Gina like the Commerce Secretary, Energy Secretary, but most importantly, I think, in terms of thinking of, if you're interested in AI and what states are doing with it and how states are going to react to it in the future.
Ooh, is it securitizing it?
Well, it's Jake Sullivan was also there as
I have some thoughts about that, man.
as well as John Podesta, which was very funny. Yeah, the Clinton crime family in effect. But what we have talked about
yeah, we need a guy in this like cybersecurity conversation to click on a bunch of like spearphishing emails.
Yeah, it's don't do what Johnny Don't does.
John Podesta opening his emails like on an iPad in the Oval Office, just like, I could grow my penis right now. I'm gonna click that.
Oh boy, what are you guys talking about? I'm on chat roulette. Okay, don't listen to what they're saying. No, but when we talk about AI, inevitably in the UK, weirdly, we've talked about things like investment and planning, and to a lesser extent, but not to no extent, have we talked about national security. In the US, that conversation has, I would say, progressed an enormous amount in the last 6 weeks, and probably one of those very important national security memos has now been published. So that was the result of this meeting 6 weeks ago with like Sam Altman and Jake Sullivan, essentially.
Yeah, no, we super duper promise that this thing works, and therefore it's a critical national security asset. China can't get this, and we have to get everything that we want, and you have to guard it for us.
Essentially, yes. I mean, OpenAI said that it believes building additional infrastructure in the U.S. for AI is critical to the country's industrial policy and economic future. We appreciate, they said, the White House convening this meeting of hens for us foxes, as it is a recognition of the priority of infrastructure to create jobs, help guarantee the benefits of AI are widely distributed, and ensure America will continue to be the forefront of AI innovation, said the OpenAI spokesman after that meeting in late September. They also shared privately generated economic impact analysis with administration officials, basically saying, look, if you build gigantic data centers fucking everywhere, it will create 1 trillion jobs, which we know from here is a lie, right?
Accidentally doing like too cheap to meter nuclear energy, but using it for AI is one of the funniest and dumbest outcomes I can imagine.
Well, this is a huge part of what they were talking about, because basically, that meeting happened. No one really knows what went on inside until this memo comes out. So a couple days ago, the memorandum on advancing the United States' leadership in artificial intelligence, harnessing artificial intelligence to fulfill national security objectives, and fostering the state, security, and trustworthiness of artificial intelligence was released.
Oh, you'll never turn that into an acronym.
Yeah.
This is now calling to mind AI Chernobyl. Just like, Comrade Dyatlov, we can't shut the reactor down now. It's in the middle of generating a picture of Jesus as a crab beckoning Donald Trump out of the sea.
Well, this might get dangerously close to AI Chernobyl in that one of the only ways you can plausibly do this are nuclear power plants. So you just get regular Chernobyl, but it happened in order to provide you with shrimp Jesus.
The first principle that it says is the United States must lead the world's development of safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. To that end, the United States government and civil society will, and basically they say, turn everything towards this. Civil society, academia, and so on, promote and secure the foundational capabilities, quote, using all available legal authorities to assist in, for example, attracting and rapidly bringing to the U.S. all individuals with relevant technical expertise who would improve competitiveness in AI and related fields, and so on.
If they actually knock this together, what they're talking about, what they're laying the groundwork for here is the kind of like AI equivalent of a Manhattan Project, right? Like this is being written about the way nuclear physics was in the 30s.
Or like Operation Clippy.
Yeah, but there'll be a scene in the film where they all put like the protective glasses on, but instead of a nuclear explosion, it's just going to be one giant shrimp Jesus.
Until someone invents a shrimpier Jesus.
Like a man breaking down in tears because he sees a woman with 3 tits, like mushroom cloud size.
So, for example, this is November. I know you joke, but like this is.
No, I don't.
Well, this is quite directly sort of beat for beat, more or less the same as National's NSC 68.
Yes, all of the fucking tragedy and pathos of the, like, you know, early Cold War, but over shrimp Jesus. You're gonna get like they're gonna have to execute a modern day Rosenbergs for like leaking how to make shrimp Jesus pictures to China.
For leaking the prompt that makes the best one.
Yeah.
They can't spare the electricity for the electric chair. It's all going into making shrimp Jesus.
The logic, the structure, the goals, and a lot of the like means were quite similar to the massive buildup of nuclear arms in the early Cold War in the 1950s.
It's genuinely like if you had done Oppenheimer, but the bomb didn't work, like ever. And then the back third of the movie is just Oppenheimer going, "Wow, that was a waste of time."
Yeah, it's I am one day going to become death.
All right,
Any second now.
Yeah, the back side of the movie was actually Oppenheimer going around every government office going, like, the bomb's totally gonna work. It's gonna work so hard, it's actually gonna kill us all. That's how much it's gonna work.
Yeah, sort of is what happened.
They kind of did. Like, yeah, Fermi was like, yeah, what if it just fucking ignites the atmosphere? So, yeah, nothing new under the sun, except that I genuinely... You might think to yourself, right, well, if the US government is taking this at this higher level completely seriously, maybe there's something in this. Do not be fooled. Everyone involved in this is absolutely stupid enough to be betting everything on a technology that is a huge waste of time.
Jake Sullivan said, private companies are leading the development of AI, not the government. And that's one of the distinctions, actually, between sort of the 1950 memo and this one, which is that that was largely seen as a state-led activity because it needed to be kept secure. So I was saying private industry wasn't involved.
Yeah.
From it.
They got Matt Damon involved, as I recall.
Yeah, not that it wasn't involved. Like I say, far from not involved. But this is
no.
so
It was
different.
Leslie Groves in the movie because it's a military project.
Yeah. This is essentially the U.S. national security community looking at OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever and saying, okay, you're now securitized. You are now as NatSec as like Boeing, as far as we're concerned.
We're going to bring you into the fold, which means we're going to protect you and nurture you forever. By the way, the last guy we did this for was Elon Musk, and that has been biting us in the ass constantly, like every 6 months minimum, ever since we did that.
It's so funny he spent 2 years on the phone to Putin while being a high-level national security contractor.
Like not to get like too Mueller she wrote, but that is basically treason. And it doesn't matter because he has been securitized. He's a critical national security asset for some fucking reason.
This is our critical national security dipshit. this one Redditor holds the entire edifice of like the space program together.
I have been speaking a lot with this Elon Musk. He tells me that things in America are very epic. I do not understand what this means.
You're telling me that the American space program is being held together by a sort of esoteric fascist?
Oh my God! Nothing
unprecedented.
Is new yeah, I mean the fact that he only thinks in memes.
The point of studying history is to be able to remember something that the current situation is a bit like, and then waggle your eyebrows a lot.
Studying history is 80% reading, 20% forehead exercise. I mean, the guy thinks purely in memes. I mean, if anyone has ever been an NPC who gets his chip replaced occasionally and is mad about the current thing, it is Mr. like the based Ural Chads are going to overrun the them army, like getting a phone call back from Donald Trump, switching out his chip and becoming like, I'm the dark MAGA based democracy defender or whatever. It is very amusing to just see him switch effortlessly between these things while forgetting he's a national security contractor, but also having his companies be so individually a linchpin in things that everybody still needs to suffer him. It is
speaking of suffering him, it's interesting to use that phrasing because I'm trying to figure out what off-ramps there are for anybody who wants to be rid of a turbulent Elon Musk. And I genuinely can't think of any besides taking a swim off the back of his yacht. Like, that's not to say that I think it should happen, although I do. Yeah. It's just that I don't...
I mean, it could have been Zuckerberg, right? If they had the MMA fight. That could have...
Agent Zuck, you've been injected with experimental CIA hyperdized fucking antibiotics.
Another thing about studying history is that you get get to do counter history. And I do imagine that a lot of counter history will be like, what if Elon and Zuck did have the MMA fight? Like, how would that have changed? Would that have like humbled Elon enough to like not do the weird X jump at every opportunity?
Like sliding doors stuff, you know, it would have changed the course of his life. He would have become
I'd like to see him do the fucking little star jump with 2 broken legs.
Because the way to think about these guys is increasingly they're basically kings of stuff.
And they're not even good at swinging swords around. This guy isn't even good at jumping.
Yeah, he'd be easily defeated by the MP for Runcorn.
Well, that's the way out of it. We lure Elon Musk to Cheshire of a sort of Saturday night, and we just wait and see what happens.
I'm saying that these guys are basically like becoming, kings, and this is Sam Altman sees his opportunity to become a nation state, essentially. I mean, Jensen Huang writes about sovereign AI as like the most important end goal of what he's doing, which he refers to as a nation's capabilities to produce AI using its own infrastructure, data, workforce, and business networks. And so, like, the whole point of private companies like leading the development of AI, not the government, is regardless of whether or not it does work, what it represents is a huge capture of a huge amount of productive capacity by a shrinking number of people.
It's also pretty funny because we don't really produce anything autochthonously in the West anyway. Like the stuff, like, okay, you can say that we're producing we've got our own AI data centers, like they're not in like China or whatever, but we don't make the computers in the West. So
we actually, again, that's also a very important factor here, which is that for a very long time, the only place that could really make those computers was Taiwan, but a TSMC owned fab in Arizona just increased its output beyond the fab in Taipei for the first time. So like a huge amount of investment is going into this stuff. Another one is the expectation of the national security community in America is that the demands of AI use in the way that they're looking at, which is generating AGI, creating God, but also using God to spy on people, is going to increase America's overall energy demand by 25%.
Oh, good.
When you
Overall.
put it that way, that seems like both a lot and also weirdly low. To be like, yeah, we invented God. He's going to put your electricity bill up.
Like a bit.
Yeah, he's a bit juicy to run. He's like a C63 AMG, very powerful, but like it does come at a cost. Not good for a daily driver.
Yeah, God on the one hand, like sanctions on Russia on the other hand. These will have about the same effect on your heating bill.
So they also say, right, and this will be, we recognize this when we talked about data centers in Britain with Paris, that the government shall coordinate efforts to streamline permitting approvals and incentives for the construction of AI-enabling infrastructure as well as surrounding assets, especially data centers and nuclear clean energy generation plants to be hooked up to those data centers. So like they are much in the same way we did with an economic development lens. With a national security lens, the U.S. is doing largely the same thing, or at least the appropriations.
Which is funny given that last I heard they were having some serious risks about having to like physically secure just their power grid. There was this thing from the NERC that came out a few years back that they've since been very quiet about, which you hope is because they're remedying it, that like you could with like no tools and a small group of people take out 9 substations and like 1 manufacturer in the US, and the US power grid would be irrecoverably damaged. Like it would just be off indefinitely. So,
well, that's why, in fact, a lot of these nuclear reactors won't be going into the power grid in general. They will be powering particular data centers.
Because that's way more important. Right. We built God and then we killed it in a power cut because we didn't get like a surge protector for our PC. So when the power went out, we just killed God by accident.
Well, God's kind of like a Furby. Like even if you take the batteries out, he's quite hard to sharp. Like you have to lock him in a dark cupboard.
Tama-God-Chi.
I have one theory about this, which is that I remember when we talked about Wirecard, their escape plan was Deutsche Bank, where they'd buy Deutsche Bank, then hide all the crime in Deutsche Bank's gigantic book.
You think that OpenAI's escape capsule is the federal government?
I think their escape capsule is to basically become a privately owned department of the federal government that's also considered to be the most important and at the center of all the others. Yes.
I mean, it's a good plan. This is the first smart idea to come out of OpenAI, to be honest. It's simple. We take over the government.
Yeah, they're stealing the Declaration of Independence.
Well, no, we're going to AI generate the Declaration of Independence. It's going to kind of start normal, but it'll get weird. It's going to say some stuff about the terror knife. That's going to be like John Hancock, who was gay and black also.
Another possible audience for this is like U.S. allies. So, for example, the U.S. and the UAE have struck a deal related to building a huge amount of like data centers and power plants in the UAE.
Don't the UAE struggle with access to like water?
I guess you could.
That you use to cool the data centers.
Also, isn't it
like
hotter than dog shit in the UAE? Shouldn't you build data centers somewhere where it's naturally cold?
Look, don't ask me these questions. What do I look like, Jake Sullivan?
We're going to park 40 Ferraris inside the data center with their windows and doors open, running the aircon full blast just to keep the data center cool. It's going to be fine.
Wouldn't that still ultimately generate slightly more heat than cool? Oh, no. No. Don't worry about it.
It's not as if we've been doing that on like a civilizational scale.
Yeah, but look, you can also cool those data centers, and you can cool the aircon that is like cooling those centers by getting some fans from like Sainsbury's and Tesco, and cooling them with the fans.
That's right, like a little old lady who cooled down a fly situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
But when we talk about this deal, right, the government deal between the two countries was following and supporting a private sector deal between Microsoft and G42, the UAE tech investment company. So, this is like private sector in every way is like leading the charge here, and the state is just basically building the infrastructure around them as they go. But what Sullivan says further is one thing is for certain: if we don't rapidly build out this infrastructure in the next few years, adding tens or even hundreds of gigawatts of power to the grid, we risk falling behind the implied China.
In what? Like ability to generate shit?
Someone else will develop the free boob Jesus shrimp with shrimp on their hands.
Realistically, right, this is, let's take it on its own merits, which is, let's say that it does what they want it to do, right? The idea is we risk falling behind in the creation of the genie that we assume is going to be able to like just sort of give us whatever we want. And we need a huge amount more power to create, God, basically, because the Chinese will build God first. I mean, that's
fine. This wasn't expected to be Chinese.
if anything, this is, I remember we read that article by Henry Kissinger and the other AI guys quite a while ago. This is the national security memo that article wanted to inspire.
See, his legacy is still alive.
Well, indeed. I cribbed some of this in the ACLU. The memo writes frequently about the need to protect human rights, civil liberties, privacy, and safety. And that list of good things is copied and pasted again and again and again and again throughout the document, such that you'd sort of, and again, this is from the ACLU's AI security project, they say, quote, "You'd forget this memo exists to prepare bureaucracies to carry out the work of developing and integrating artificial intelligence into every aspect of the nation's military, intelligence, security, and law enforcement operations. It is about improving the surveillance and investigative capabilities, securing diplomatic and military advantages, and improving the lethality of its soldiers and weapons. But by repeating, like a mantra, human rights, civil liberties, privacy, and safety, this document seems to say we're the good guys because that's what we're doing, unlike the bad guys who are trying to build the same capabilities to do the opposite." And what goes unsaid, this is me again, and is that the extent of this data collection that will need to continue, if all of this compute and nuclear energy is to be used, right? If you're going to require the US to generate 25% more electricity, you're going to need a huge amount more data than exists, which means you have to start gathering more data on everything and everybody, which I imagine will make the Patriot Act look very, very, very small potatoes. And, the memo itself, which I've read a couple of times, it's quite dense, makes clear that there's a risk management framework that prevents someone from being monitored simply for the exercise of a right guaranteed under the Constitution if they're American. It's very easy to find some additional justification to, surveil Palestinian rights activists, for example, or surveil any non-American as invasively as you want for any reason you want. And in fact, I'll ask the system to kludge together any justification you need to do whatever you want to them. And all of this is, of course, going to be overseen by opaque in-agency oversight boards, which, again, is one of these things that sounds quite technical. But the fact is, they're trying to get around there ever being a church commission in the memorandum creating the mandate to build God.
Well, as Nietzsche would say, if he was alive now, God is alive and he's Chinese, so we must kill him.
He was dead, but he's back and Chinese.
They've built God in China. Incredible things are happening in China. They've built God, and he's Chinese.
So
he's speaking Mandarin. He says, hello, Jesus. He doesn't call him Jesus. He calls him something Chinese. I don't know what he says. But they're speaking Chinese, the Holy Spirit too. They're speaking in. He's eating the sacrament with chopsticks. He's using little chopsticks, okay? He's having dim sum. Chinese God up in heaven. St. Peter, he's up there too. He's also having dim sum. He's enjoying prawn toast. He's got a little wispy beard.
Really enjoying the theological implications of God the Father taking the Eucharist.
Yeah, it's kind of like self-suck.
Oh, come on.
There are a few things that November and I were talking about earlier. When I was talking.
I didn't anticipate that this podcast would end up in any of the directions.
Were any of them Chineses?
When we were talking about the script for the Nixon thing at the beginning, we were talking about also.
Yeah, that's right. 2 people worked on that.
Could you do it? Well, one person worked on it and then asked for the other person to say if it was good. But we talked about all the stuff that we think that would be fun to get a cameo of Trump saying. And number one,
because I want when he loses again, right? I want to get a cameo from him in prison because I think that I hope they'll let him, and when they do, I want a cameo of Trump saying Frank Colombo, the name Frank Colombo.
It's gonna cost you 4 packs of cigarettes to get a cameo from me, Donald Trump. Maybe one candy bar.
I think, him saying Frank Colombo would be great. Mr. Former President, you have some mail here. It appears that a woman in Scotland is entering the Make-A-Wish Foundation because her blood is fucked up.
Yeah, because I really, really want a wish. I got the disease of wanting to have a wish real bad.
I got the disease of thinking about what it would be.
Wish deficiency.
Yeah, I have no wishes. My only wish, my fondest wish, is to hear you say the name Frank Colombo. But now I have another one, which is I want him to list all of the dim sum that there is. Hargo, Shumai. I'd love to do that.
They're having Jesus and God. They're having Xiaolong Bao. They're drinking the soup.
One of the few things that AI is good for that's funny is Donald Trump singing in Mandarin.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Hard to argue.
We need to build a nuclear power plant so that can keep happening.
St. Peter is having one of the little egg buns. They're kind of sweet, but also salty. You can't quite say if it's a dessert or not.
I like to meet this general sometime.
I can't believe what I was trying to talk about. What I was trying to talk about was we say it sounds quite like spottish and technical to say that, they're going to rely on internal oversight mechanisms rather than visible democratic accountability. But that's sort of what makes national security overreach tick. And what this is a gigantic private sector led for just the requirements of their models. They need more data to train the models because otherwise they're going to have to get feedstock that was generated by itself. Right? They need a huge number of more ways to intrude into people's lives and spy on them. And, because they want to build God before the Chinese do, the American national security community is perfectly willing to turn all of the resources of its gigantic spy apparatus to their ends, so long as they say we can build God as long as he's American. And, the other thing, right, to note here as well, is that counterintelligence is going to become very significant, where AI infrastructure and intellectual property is going to be now listed among official counterintelligence priorities. And that you have to ask as well, what's this going to mean for all of the tech guys who are going to ayahuasca orgies all the time? Is Ayala going to have to get national security clearance?
Mr. President, so we believe that these people indicated here came in the fluffer.
I'll never be able to look at one of those diagrams the same. Henry, where do we stand on my birthday party? Yeah. Good God, these people are sick.
Came in Haldeman.
Inaudibly.
Yeah.
I'll fluff them for you, Mr. President.
Bill Clinton?
I'll do it. They can come in me. That's no problem.
That's Elvis. That's Milo's Elvis. Milo's Elvis is very Clintonian.
I just want to be a cop.
Anyway, look, what all of this amounts to, I think, is an announcement of an intention to do something much bigger and more autonomous than the Patriot Act. that when I read this national security memo, that's what I see in it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I see the using a lot of powers that have been conferred, because a memo is different from an act, right? But that using all of the powers that have already been conferred upon it by previous administrations, including the Patriot Act, very much so. Using these kinds of precedents, the idea is going to be to advance surveillance, because that's what it requires to make AI work. It requires surveillance, to advance a huge amount more surveillance into more people's lives, and to make enforcement of, let's say, national security priorities a much more powerful and present. So OpenAI, its response to this particular memo was, we believe a democratic vision for AI is essential to unlocking its full potential and ensuring its benefits are broadly shared. By democratic, they of course mean like liberal democracies, i.e. the US, not democratizing AI. They say AI is a transformational technology that can be used to strengthen democratic values or to undermine them. That's why we believe democracies should continue to take the lead in AI development, guided by values like freedom, fairness, and respect for human rights. And it's why we think countries that share these values should understand how, with the proper safeguards,
they're going to make a dictatorial AI in China.
AI can help protect people, deter adversaries, and even prevent future conflict. We're already collaborating with DARPA to help cyber defenders better protect critical networks. We're already collaborating with USAID, which is using ChatGPT to reduce administrative burdens for staff. We're also see opportunities to deepen our collaboration with the U.S. National Laboratory and our bioscience research partnership with Los Alamos. And of course, what they're not saying there is partnering with the FBI, CIA, ICE, local police forces, all of these sort of enforcement arms of the state. So, that is putting my marker down, let's see where it goes. And, let's debate after November. Let's see who takes this forward in which ways. But, anyway, we've gone very long. So I want to say once again, thank you very much for listening to this free episode of TF. There are shirts if you wish to cover your torso.
Shirts are so fucking good.
Yeah, the shirts are great. I love the shirts. I'm going to I never really wear the shirts except to sleep. I will wear the Avignon Popes one. I'm going to wear the Avignon Popes one.
Merchandise? To be most of the shirts are kind of pieces of shit, but these two, pretty good.
I wear the shirts all the time. I sort of live in them to the point where my wife is just like, please wear one of your other shirts.
They drag the average of my wardrobe up because I have so many of them.
I have so many shirts.
Ultimately, man, if I'm reaching for a t-shirt, it's probably going to be one with one of our bits on it.
So far, we've had I hate the shirts and my wife hates the shirts. I wear them all the time because they're Chinese. Beautiful.
I just did a straightforward endorsement. I was able to endorse these. They're good shirts.
I don't hate the shirts. I feel weird wearing my own brand. It'd be like, what if Calvin Klein wore Calvin Klein?
Yeah.
I think you probably
Riley in collaboration with Riley for Riley by Riley.
Yes, that's right. I'd wear that. Anyway, I really like both of them. I like the Banish to the Lagoon one. I love the Avignon Popes one.
Interesting. So you're racing them oppositionally. I think it's so sad how we pit t-shirts against each other. We teach them to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller after a couple of washes.
Yeah, it's kind of a pick-me t-shirt, the Lagoon one, I would say.
Oh my God. I've driven myself crazy with national security memos today.
If you buy both of the t-shirts, it's cheaper. Yeah.
The listener can't see this, but Riley is wearing Aidan Jones merchandise currently.
You're wearing another guy's merch. That's fine.
But check out Aidan Jones. Yeah, so do check out the shirts. I really like them, as I like all the shirts. I like all the shirts.
Don't tell me all the shirts you've got favorites.
Beautiful.
And also, we're doing a live show. We are going to be alive in London on November the 24th.
At 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. It's a Sunday, so check that out.
Yeah, stay out inadvisably late. Show up to work late. Get in trouble.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, things you shouldn't hit with podcasts. Live.
Yeah, that's right. We've resurrected the Rockford Speedway, man. Okay, this is getting too detailed now.
If you are a $10 subscriber, there is a discount code for discount tickets on the Patreon at the $10 tier. If you're wondering where that is, it does exist. Go there to retrieve it. Please come to the show. Also, I'm in Birmingham on Sunday, the 3rd of November, which is soon. Please come to that if you're in Birmingham and want to see my show.
Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be in Chinese.
Hey, honestly, get out ahead, Get out ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
I'm picking a horse in this race, and it's China.
All right. We will see you on the bonus episode in a few days, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.